In this video, we will take a look at the piano roll. That is something you will use a lot if you use software instruments. Because this video is going to be a bit long, I have decided to break it down into two parts. Part 1 will focus on the functions and all of the menus, and part 2 will focus on some more practical ways of working with the piano roll. So let's start from the very beginning. What is the piano roll? It is an editor that shows you the MIDI notes of the selected region or regions, and it displays the notes in horizontal colored bars. Now, depending on the velocity and length of the note, we get different colors and lengths. Also, the piano roll is what you will be using to program your parts in, if you're not playing them, that is. To open it, as I'm sure you already know, you double click on a region. Or you can press E as in echo to open the editors. That option will bring up the last selected option from the editors. Or you can press P as in piano. And my personal favorite, you can open it on a separate window by pressing Command and 4. So you select the one that you want, Command and 4, and this window pops up. The behavior of the double click on the region depends on the editing settings. So if we open the settings, Command and comma, then go to General and then go to Editing, down here we get double clicking a MIDI region opens and we get 3 options. Now by default, we have Piano Roll Editor. Then we also get Event List and Score Editor. So I like this one, I'm going to leave it here. Now let's make this one a bit bigger. And let's select the chords. Now let's look at a few functional settings before we work with the piano roll. As you can see, we also get an inspector here. If you don't need it, or you need more screen real estate for the piano roll, you can go to View and then Hide Local Inspector. In the inspector, you can time and scale quantize your data. But we will look at all of that in detail at the quantizing video. Now I have logic in dark color appearance. If that doesn't suit you, you can change the background of the piano roll in the settings. So once again, Command comma, then go to Display and then go to Editors. And here you can check the bright background to get something a bit brighter. I'll go back to the previous one. Now let's look at the view options. The first one is Link, which by default is enabled. It's this button here, and when it's enabled, it displays the data of the selected region. So if I click at another region, you can see that the MIDI data changes. If it's off, no matter what I choose, it stays on the piano roll that I opened first. Let's enable it and go back to view. Underneath link, we get 2 options, one track and selected regions. So I can have more than one region displayed in the piano roll. So let's select these 2 for example. But as you can see, this can get a bit confusing, especially if everything is on at the same range. Now a cool trick is to double click the note of the region that you want to isolate. So let's say that I want the melodic stuff, the melody line, I double click on it and it isolates just these notes. Now if I want to bring everything back, I double click anywhere at the background. Now if I select one track, I can only have one track displayed. So no matter how many I choose, only one track will be displayed. Now drum names, as you can see, is unavailable in this kind of track. You need a drum plugin. So I have programmed something here. Now as you can see, there are notes, there are piano notes here, and next to the notes we get the names of the drums. So if I select drum names, it will remove the piano and only keep the names of the drums. Let's go back to that. Note labels is quite helpful. it gives you the note name and velocity for its note on the bar. Region transpose, I don't even know why that is an option. When it's enabled, I can select all of my notes and transpose them. So let's select them, let's solo that. Actually, let's have a listen first, so listen for the pitch. So I can transpose them, and you can see them going up. So by 7 semitones. Let's go back. I'm going to disable region transpose, and I'm going to transpose it again by 7, 8. It doesn't move, it stays in its original position, but when I play back, it has been transposed. So let's go back and let's enable that again. Underneath that, we have set note color, which will set the color of the notes depending on your choice. I prefer to leave it on velocity. That way I know how loud a note is just by its color. So let's look at an example. Let's take this one. Let's actually make it bigger. So if I take it all the way down, it becomes purple. Now as I raise the velocity, it becomes blue, and then orange, and then green, and eventually it becomes red for maximum velocity. Let's take it back. Next, scroll and play. You already know that from the previous videos. I do not like that. Next, we have secondary ruler, in case you want to display the timing in the piano roll as well. Remember, we have the same one in view in the main window. Secondary ruler. Let's go back here, let's go to view, and then show global tracks. You already know that from the previous videos. Same shortcut here, G as in golf, and it'll bring up the global tracks. Note that this one is independent from the global tracks in the main window, so let's bring that one up as well. So if I add something here, let's say I add a movie, it's not being added to this one here. Of course, any changes that I make here will apply to that one as well. But let's say I take out arrangement, it will be taken away from here, from the piano roll, but it will stay here in the main window. So next one is configure global tracks, which does the same thing as right-clicking on it. So I can either do that or simply right-click on it and select what I want to add or take away. Next one is global tracks protect button. That will lock the tracks. So if I enable the tempo lock, for example, let's enable it first. So if I enable it and then I try to move the tempo to make the changes, I will get this message, current track or object is protected. Right, so next to that we have the collapse mode. That will collapse the piano roll to only the notes that are being used. This is incredibly helpful when you're programming drums. So let's look at the beat I have here. Let's press G, let's unsolo and click on that one. So right now there are a lot of notes that I will never use. By clicking on the collapse mode, everything is easier to manage as I'm only seeing the notes that I will be working with. Next to that we have automation, because we do have automation in MIDI as well. And we will look at automation in great detail at another video, but for now let me show you just the very basic stuff. Also, you can access it by pressing A as in alpha. So let's say, why are these so big? Let's make them shorter. So if I select a note, you can see that it lights up down here. So right now it's on velocity, so I can grab that one, raise the velocity, lower it, whatever. I can change the parameters from here, select whatever I want, modulation, expression, whatever parameter you want, and I can add it in. As I said, more of that at the automation video I'm going to press A again. Let's go back to the chords. Next to that, we have the MIDI In. Now, we have looked at that in detail at video 40 of the series. But really quickly, when that is enabled, I can enter notes in the piano roll by pressing any key on my keyboard. And by keyboard, I mean both my computer keyboard and my piano keys. The way it works is that I put my playhead wherever I want and I simply press a key. And if I want to use my computer keyboard, I bring up the musical typing keyboard and I press keys there. So as I said, if you want to have more detailed look on input recording, look at video 40 of the series. I'm going to Command Z these. Okay. Next to that, we have MIDI Out. When that is enabled, when I select a note, it will play back. Sometimes when you're working with really long notes or drones, you may want to have MIDI Out disabled. Now next to that, you already know from previous videos, we have the Cuts Playhead button. It is the same as the one in the main window, and important shortcut, left quote or tilde. Both symbols are usually on the same button in most keyboards. Let's go to the functions menu. So our first option is time handles. This is essentially the time stretch function, but for MIDI data. Meaning I can stretch, shrink, and change the timing of the notes. I found that messing around with drums or beats produces some cool happy accidents. I haven't been very lucky with more melodic material. But let's look at the melodic region first and apply a useful example to drum beat later. So let's see. Let's select it, first of all. With that enabled, when I click and drag, two time handles appear. Right, so when I let go, I'm left with this blue rectangle. So right now it won't do anything because I have no notes selected. And that's how it works. It will only affect the selected notes. So let's say that I want to affect the top two notes of these two chords here. Also, when I click and drag, the time handles will snap to what my division is set to. So right now, let's go to custom. It is set on 16th notes. So it will only snap to that. Now if I want to bypass it, remember you drag and then hold down Control. Okay, so once I have my selection, I can move one of the handles and the other will act as a pivot point. So I can grab this one and then move it. And of course I can go beyond the other handle. Once you do that, the notes exchange places, but their relative start points maintain their position. So let's Command Z, let's select them again. Oh, also, if I select notes, I can, let's say I select everything here and I want to exclude something, I can hold down Shift and unselect the ones that I don't want included. And so I can adjust the position of the handles by hovering at the middle line. So instead of grabbing the handle, I can go to the line here until my pointer changes and then grab and adjust my selection. Also, and that is very convenient if you're using this function, you don't have to select it from the functions menu. You can leave it unchecked. Actually, let's do that right now. And then simply hold down Shift, Option and drag. So Shift, Option and drag. And as you can see, it changes the time handles. So let's look at a quick example with the drums. So let's have a listen first. Okay, so let's make it bigger. I like the second bar here that has this double 16th right note. So I want to affect that, but leave out the kick and the snare and everything that's happening here. So I'm going to Shift, Option and drag these. I'm just going to select the simples. And then I'm going to shrink those. So let's go here and let's have a listen. That's fine, but it's a bit empty. I think it needs a right here. Okay, that's good. Let's go back to functions. So you select the ones that you want and then press Ctrl and M as mute, and it will mute them. Let's go back to the chords. Underneath that, we have convert sustain pedal to note length. That function will analyze your MIDI data for the sustain pedal events. That's CC64 if you're curious, and CC stands for continuous control, by the way. And based on the length of the sustain, the notes will be lengthened to match that. Let's quickly look at it. So if I press A to bring up the automation and then select the sustain, let's see, I'm going to add sustain for the first two chords. So let's make it shorter so that we can see. So sustain for this chord here. Let's leave this one out and then sustain for the last two chords. So here. Now, when I select the convert sustain pedal to note length, it will lengthen the notes that have sustain data to match its length. As you can see, the section that did not have sustain was left as it was, and the rest of the notes were affected. Also, after doing that, the sustain data from the automation is erased. So let's go back, let's delete that and press A to hide the automation. Now next we have set MIDI channel to voice number. When we select this one, MIDI channel numbers will be assigned to the selected notes in ascending order, and the highest pitch will be assigned MIDI channel 1. So let's look at an example because in practice it's much easier to understand. So I have this string section here. Let's actually make this one bigger as well. If we look at the piano roll, I have C4 and C2, C sharp 2. Let's take it down to C2. Now, if I open up Contact, small parenthesis here, this is a third-party plugin, so it will not be available in Logic. You have to buy it separately. Now, don't worry about that now. We will look at third-party instruments later in the series. So the range of the violin starts from G3, meaning it can't play the C2 that I have on the piano roll. So what if I want to assign the C2 to a cello, which is well within its range? So in Contact, I have the violins set on MIDI channel 1, and I have the cello set to MIDI channel 2. So let's close that. Oh, and another thing that we will look at in a bit is when you double click on a note, it brings up this event list box that gives you information about the selected note. So when I click on C4, for example, I can see that it is set to MIDI channel 1. I can see that here. That number indicates the MIDI channel. Similarly, C2 is also set to channel 1. Now, if I select both of them, and then I go to Functions and set MIDI channel to voice number, the channel for the bottom note will change to MIDI channel 2. And if I select it, you're going to hear it. And in the events box, you will see that it changed to number 2. So now, if I press play, both the violin and the cello will play back together. That's it. Oh, last thing on that, you may want to have them in what looks as separate tracks, but it really isn't. So I'm going to close that. So right click on the MIDI region, then go to convert and then select separate by MIDI channel, note pitch, or if you have different articulations, you can separate them by articulation. So let's go with MIDI channel. Now that will create what looks like new tracks. But if you look at the inspector, That's instrument 5, that's also instrument 5. They are the same instrument. So if I solo one of them, both will be soloed. And if I open up the mixer, so X, it shows up as just one channel. So let's go back, let's unsolo that, and let's go back to the chords. So next we have insert instrument MIDI settings as events. That is used to prepare our MIDI regions for export. Essentially, you add the program change events and the bank information of the instrument as MIDI events. But we will look at that at another video when we'll work with some more software instruments. Next, we have MIDI transform, which will also get its own video because there is a lot of material to demonstrate and explain here. These are the options we use to transform the MIDI information and also make it more human, in terms of performance. And lastly, we have lock empty position, which will lock my MIDI data in place. I mostly use this when I'm scoring something for a movie and I know I'm going to change the tempo. As you already know, if you change the tempo, that will move the MIDI events and everything will be out of sync. But when you lock the empty position, it will always stay the time position I have locked it in, and it also retains its tempo information. So let's try the drum beat, for example. So if we play it back with the metronome, so K as in kilo, you see that it is on time. But if I raise the tempo without locking it, the region will increase in tempo to follow the changes. So let's go to almost 155. Naturally, so let's Command Z, go back to 87. Now, if I lock it in place, okay, let's select those functions, lock empty position. I will also extend the region so that you can see where it will go. So right now, as you can see, we are at 22 seconds. So when I increase the tempo, let's go all the way to 170. That's almost double. The position will still be at 22 seconds. Well, there you go. And it moved obviously to follow the changes. But when I play it back, it will still be at 22 seconds and it will have retained its original tempo. So you see it plays back at the original tempo, but it doesn't follow the metronome. So let's Command Z to go back. We will look at more of these techniques when we will look at working with videos in Logic. So the next list we will look at, let's select the chords, is the edit list. Now you already know most of these functions here. So you have your undo options, which I hope you're not using because you're using the shortcuts. And underneath that we have the commands, editing commands. Again, I really hope you're not using that list and you are using the shortcuts. Underneath that we have some other options that are pretty much self-explanatory. I think that there's no point in demonstrating most of these. So let's start with select. You can select according to your options. It's pretty easy. Then repeat, important shortcut, Command and R. We've seen that. Multiple is a good one in case you want to do something more specific. So if I select it, we get number of copies, how many times we want to copy it. And on adjustment, I can select, I have more copy options, which is pretty cool if you want to be more specific. Now underneath that we've got length, which will change the length of the selected notes, double, half and change. Split will split them. The only one you might not get is notes at rounded playhead. So let's look at that. That will split the notes that extend beyond the bar. So if I grab this one and extend it beyond, so you can see it passes 5. Let's extend it a bit more. It will be split here. So it's selected, then go to split at rounded playhead, and it would split it exactly at the bar. Command Z, go back. Next one is join notes, Command and J as in join, and that also works for audio regions. I'm sure you remember from I think it was a tool videos. Next one is move, which will move the selected events according to your choice. We will look at that in great detail at an upcoming video. Next one is trim. The ones I use from that are mostly note start to playhead and note end to playhead, but I use the key commands. Now the final result will obviously depend on where the playhead is located. So let's say if I place my playhead before the note, so let's go with that one. I'm going to place it at 3, and then I'm going to use command and the left bracket. That will trim the note to the start of my playhead. Actually extend the start of my playhead. It's command Z, and if I put it here, and then press command and left bracket again, that will trim the note to the start of my playhead. And as you can see, it's this tiny bit here. That's command Z. Next, transpose. We will look at the shortcuts in the next video because they are very important to your workflow, but you can tell you can transpose by semitone or by an octave. Always use the shortcuts, really helpful. And let's go all the way down to copy MIDI events. Now, what's the difference with copying the region with the command R shortcut? There are two actually. The first and biggest one is that it will copy anything that is under the locator range. That means all the regions. So let's say that my locators are here. Now that includes the mellow chimes as well. I will only select the brown one. Let's press E to bring it back. And let's say that I want to copy it on bar 12. Because both regions are underneath my locators, no matter if I have one selected, when I go to copy MIDI events and press OK, it will copy both. That's command Z. And the other difference is that it will copy the automation as well. So if, let's say I'm here, press A, I have nothing here. Let's actually draw something. Just for this one. Command. Let's say I have this sustain automation here. So if I click Command Alt, Command C, and then Command V, you will see that it copies my MIDI data, but it doesn't copy my MIDI automation, my automation. So let's Command Z. But right now, let's just try this range here. I'm going to press C. Let's say that I want to copy that. With that automation, I can go to Edit and then go to Click MIDI Events. Actually, let's put the playhead here first. Copy MIDI Events and then press OK. And you will see that it copies that with the automation as it was here. If you're wondering why these notes are not included, it's because they're not after bar 5. And let's Command Z. So, as you can see, a pop-up menu comes up. And these are pretty easy to understand. Copy merge, I won't demonstrate all of them, I'll just tell you what they do. Now, copy merge will blend the data that you're copying with the data that is already at the paste destination position, as we have seen. Copy replace, that will delete the data at the paste destination position and will only keep the copied data. Copy insert, everything at the paste destination position will be moved to the right. The next three, move, merge, replace, and insert, are similar to copy modes. The difference is that they completely remove the MIDI events from the original position. Now rotate, that's a weird one. What happens is that the source events from the original position are moved to the destination position, and then the destination position events are moved to the source position. And if there is something else between them, that will also move toward the source position. So essentially it rotates the MIDI events. Now direct swap. That's actually really helpful when you're working with software instruments. So let's look at an example. Let's take the drum beat, for example. Let's cancel that one and go here. Let's zoom in a bit. Okay, that's fine. So let's say that there are a lot of times where you want to swap notes within the same region. Let's say that I want to swap bar 2 for bar 3. So here's what you do. I will cycle the area that I want to sweep. So let's say bar 2, I'm going to select that and then place my playhead to where I want to go. So bar 3. And then I'll go to copy, MIDI events, and we'll go to direct swap and let's try it. And as you can see, bar 2 and bar 3 have exchanged places. Now that is very helpful, but be very careful. It will also be applied to any of the other regions that are within the cycle range. So if I was to do it here or with these chords, it will also swap the notes from the region that is above that. Now let's have a look at the next option. Remove. That will remove the source region and then place the rest to the original position. Let's also quickly look at that. Command C. So let's say I want to get rid of the first two bars. So what I will do is, since these are under the locators, when I go to remove, it will remove that and then the next two bars will take its place. So let's take a look and then remove. I check that everything is okay, so I press OK, it removes that and places the next two bars on its place. That's Command Z to go back, and underneath that we have delete MIDI events. We get some options as well. So duplicates will delete any event that is at the same position. That can be anything from automation, afterthoughts, expression, controller values, and that's it. And then inside locators, that will delete anything inside the locators, both the MIDI notes and the events. Outside locators is the same, but all the information outside the cycle range. Now outside region boundaries, that's a useful one. Sometimes you have data that is not within the region. It will not be played back and it will not be visible. For example, let's press C. For example, let's say I make this region shorter. So I'm going to take this one and go to 9.3. Now, right now, it's not visible. It will not be played back, but the data is still there. So if I extend the region, you can still see the data. So if I bring it here and then go edit, delete MIDI events, outside region boundaries, and I select that. Now, if I extend my region, the data will no longer be there. It has deleted everything. So let's Command Z and go back. And the last option, delete MIDI events, unselected within region. That will delete the unselected notes that are at the start of the first selected note and at the end of the last selected note. For example, let's say I select these bottom three notes here, right? And let's zoom in to look at their length. So right now this extends beyond this bar here, so that note will be deleted. And that note will also be deleted. That one will be deleted. That one will not be deleted because it is exactly at the start and doesn't extend to the next note. I actually have these three notes here, so that will also not be deleted. So let's try it. Unselected within range, it has deleted them. Okay, it's Command Z, go back. And that was actually the first part for the piano roll. Do not worry, the next part will be much shorter and it will focus on more practical things.